This is a constitutional case for gun control. For reference, I will be arguing for stronger gun control. And the argument I will be making is that more gun control would be constitutional and ethical. So how could more gun control be constitutional? Well, first, let's look at the Second Amendment that states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That last part, shall not be infringed, is what allows us to keep and freely own our firearms and arms and implies that that right should not be infringed upon. But let's look at what would happen if those same civil liberties were left unregulated and how they could clash with other liberties or rights of citizens. Say you use your liberty to peacefully assemble to protest something that you don't like. That same assembly can be interrupted by someone yelling bomb in the middle of said assembly. The ensuing chaos could then get someone hurt or worse, killed. This is the reason why not all free speech is covered under the First Amendment. The same can be applied to gun control if the threat of a potential shooter threatens peaceful assembly or access to education from happening. If that's the case, does the law not need to be revised so as to maximize order with the minimal restriction of freedom? Looking back at the Second Amendment, there is an interesting clause in there that states, a well-regulated militia. This has some sort of implication that the regulation is expected and some sort of freedom must be exchanged for order. But how can these two phrases coexist inside the same amendment? Some would say that it only applies to the militia or just means a well-maintained military. But if only the military or militia were to be regulated, why shouldn't the citizens be subject to the same rules? This was a subject of debate for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Warren Burger, as he draws parallels from gun control to regulating other industries like automobiles. We now have constitutional support and opposition to gun control. But now let's add some context with some ethics and see why the subject matter is important. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail, he talks about just and unjust laws. He quotes St. Augustine stating that an unjust law is no law at all. He also says that some laws have good intentions, but can be applied unethically in practice. He then gives the example of the unethical but legal treatment of the Jewish people in Nazi Germany during World War II, among other examples. So why is gun control an issue? Homicide gun violence is the second largest cause of death for young Americans, second only to traffic accidents, and is the leading cause of death and homicide across all age groups. This trend continued from 1999 until 2017, when the CDC's report ends. And in cases of lone offender terrorism, firearms accounted for nearly 65% of the primary weapon used. Of those that used firearms, nearly 70% purchased them legally. To sum up, gun control needs to be revised and strengthened so as to prevent needless deaths of Americans and to allow our civil liberties to be unrestricted by fear of preventable violence. It is our duty and our right to change the government when it no longer protects us with laws that seem to be just on its face, but are unjust in practice.